Hi, welcome to Opera Happy Hour. My name is Jeremy Frank. I'm the Associate Chorus Master at LA Opera, and I'm super excited to invite you to a post-Valentine's Day special edition of Opera Happy Hour. Now, if you are anything like me, Valentine's Day in some years of my life has been the most romantic and sweet holiday that I could possibly imagine. And at other times, it's been something of a painful reminder of a bunch of mistakes that I made and other junk. But one piece that keeps coming up around the time of Valentine's Day, kind of perennially, is Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Not only is it one of Shakespeare's most often performed and famous pieces, not to mention romantic, but it also happens to be one of the pieces that most frequently gets set to music. Today, I'd like to explore Charles Gounod's setting of Romeo and Juliet, written in 1867, and I thought we'd do something different with the show today. Rather than me just lecture and play some musical examples, I wanted to open up this happy hour virtually to some guests. We'll have some guest singers, but we'll also have a guest expert who is an actress and a singer and has quite a lot to say about Shakespeare. Catherine Powers, in fact, hosted LA Opera Connect's web series, Shakespeare Sings. She made her LA Opera debut in 2015 in our production of The Ghosts of Versailles, and she's also been a teaching artist for LA Opera Connect since 2012. She is the founding director of the Vocal Arts Conservatory at California School of the Arts in San Gabriel Valley, and she is super smart, super funny, gets it both from the dramatic side and the musical side. It is my great pleasure to introduce Catherine Powers. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted to be on this show. Just to get to hang out with you and talk about Shakespeare and music, there's just nothing better.
Well, I've been really excited to open the format of this show to involve guests, and to my mind, you are the perfect person to invite first. Now, the play Romeo and Juliet dates back from 1597, and Gounod's setting operatically dates from 1867. Both of these pieces have lots of staying power. You know, the Gounod gets performed all the time. This might be one of Shakespeare's most famous plays, or at least most read by high school students, you know.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, if you went to high school in North America, you read this play. And yeah.
One of the things that I thought would be fascinating today is for us to do a side-by-side comparison of sorts, where we pit Shakespeare on one side and Gounod on the other, and we investigate where there's a tremendous amount of fidelity between these two sources, where there is very little fidelity, and then maybe why that exists. And, also in the case of Gounod, when he does stray from the path, sometimes it's so that he can play to the strengths of his own genre. And I thought we'd investigate that too. You know, the drink pairing is one of the hallmarks of this show. And that's been around a long time too. And if I understand correctly, you have a perfect in-house mixologist at your place.
Yes. I defer to the experts, and I have to say, in our house, my husband Michael is the consummate mixologist. So I've asked him to help us out today, and he has a drink for us.
That's amazing. And while Michael gets into place, I'll just take a second to brag about him a little bit. Not only is he a brilliant and creative mixologist who is interested in the pairing of cocktails to classical music specifically, but he's also a conductor, educator, and arts advocate. He taught conducting at USC for 12 years. He is also the artistic director and co-founder of a new orchestra called Orchestra Los Angeles. And he's the chair of the music department at the LA County High School of the Arts. So something tells me in the few moments that you guys have at the end of a very long day, he has probably been perfecting making really tasty cocktails for quite some time.
Yeah, exactly.
So what did you make for us today?
Well, I was tooling around with a couple different drinks as I was thinking about this, but I settled on one that's a variation on an Italian drink called Negroni. Mm-hmm. And this particular one is a variation from the usual. It uses gin, Campari, and vermouth is the original Negroni recipe. But I decided that I wanted to bring in the different elements, the different national elements into this drink. So I'm thinking about the London Dry Gin, in deference to our friend Shakespeare. I'm thinking of the Campari for the Italian, drama that we're talking about. And then, of course, Gounod, the wonderful French composer, with the Lillet, which is a great little fortified wine drink that we can drink on its own. So I thought to combine, those three into a Negroni style drink. And it just turned out perfectly. I really am happy with it. And I think bringing in all of those elements will just enhance the listener's enjoyment of this opera.
Awesome. Oh, and what's the name? What's the name of the drink?
Yes. The name, I had to pick something that was dramatic. So I'm calling it Juliet's Potion.
I love it. As if by magic, I happen to have one on my side of the computer, and it looks something like this in my world. This is amazing. Welcome. Let me make just a little toast to get us on our way today. Thank you so much for being my first interview guests on this show. I'm so thrilled to have you here. I hope this is something that we do much more in the future. And I honestly couldn't imagine a more perfect pair of people to join me. Cheers.
Oh, cheers.
So why don't we start at the very beginning? Gounod put something a little unusual. He calls it an overture prologue. I wonder why that might be. Oh, wise one.
Oh, well, he takes it right from Shakespeare. Shakespeare starts with a prologue, and it's kind of one of the most famous prologues that we can think of when we think of Shakespeare. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. So they're setting the scene. And one of the things that I think is sort of interesting about this prologue is it's a giant spoiler. It tells us exactly what's going to happen at the end of the play. A pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. Like, boom, that's it. That's the whole play. It just tells
end of the story.
That's it. That's exactly what happens. And yet it doesn't spoil it for us.
And in fact, there's something about it all that seems a little bit far off and old-timey. Gounod's choral writing happens in not in normal choral texture position. The chords are all inverted and they feel a little bit like they're floating, sort of timeless. So it sounds something like this. In a way, it's almost like we've stepped back somehow into the Renaissance, which, it almost like Shakespeare himself, who to us is an anachronism, is looking back even before his own time. So now that we've set the scene with the prologue, Gounod jumps us right into the middle of a big party where we are introduced to the two families in question. We've got the Capulets and the Montagues, and everybody's having a great time. We meet Romeo and his buddies. Romeo is heartsick because he's in love with this other girl, Rosalind, who is not quite as special. Suddenly, as if she enters with her very own spotlight, we, the audience, meet Juliet, who is amazing, and Romeo thinks so too. And as soon as she finishes her famous Juliet's Waltz, which is so famous that we're not even going to do it today, but you can hear Catherine sing an amazing version on it on her Romeo and Juliet episode on her series. We meet Juliet. She sings this great waltz. Romeo stops her, and the two of them meet each other. Now, how does this compare to the play?
Well, Gounod sort of gets straight to the action of the lovers meeting, and in the play we start with a little bit more of a street brawl. We have the Capulets and the Montagues getting in trouble with each other, the famous "Do you bite your thumb at me, sir?" Scene, and we have a brawl. Then we get to meet Juliet talking with her nurse and her mother, and the mother's saying, "Hey, we want you to get married," and Juliet's like, "Meh." So then we finally get to the ball and we get to have the meeting. So in a way, Gounod kind of gets right to the heart of the matter. And in a way, I think that's probably very effective.
Their first meeting involves a lot of like kind of bookish wordplay that's really sweet and really tender and beautiful.
Very much so, yeah. Romeo is pretty smooth. He uses a lot of rhetoric, comparing being able to touch her hand as a pilgrim on a quest and being afraid to defile this holy shrine with the kiss, and manages to convince her through this rhetoric that it's actually okay to have this kiss. In fact, he gets two.
Yeah, because at the end of their speech, at least in the opera, but I mean, this obviously comes also from Shakespeare, there's a little bit of wordplay of like, you've taken that kiss from me, give it back, which requires a second kiss. I find this to be one of the most sweet and delightful duets in the entire show. Of course, being a show called Romeo and Juliet, there's tons of duets to listen to. In the same way that I'm super excited to invite you and Michael to the program, to a real virtual happy hour, I'm super excited also to invite two wonderful young singers to present some of our musical examples tonight. First, we have Robert Staley, who is a second-year young artist in LA Opera's Young Artist Program. He made his LA Opera debut as Parpignol in La Boheme in 2019, and in the same season sang the first armored man in Magic Flute. And his lovely wife, Ashley Fabian, is also a fantastic singer. She has been an artist with Indianapolis Opera, Pittsburgh Opera, and Cincinnati Opera. And the two of them sing slightly different repertoire, so it's kind of rare for them to get to sing together. But I was thrilled when they said that they would learn this charming madrigal to be able to sing together and portray these young lovers. It sounds a little something like this.
Votre
So, Catherine, I first met you as a singer, as a studio artist at Wolf Trap Opera. I didn't really realize at the time that you are also an actress. And in fact, that's been a big part of your career, sort of bridging the gap between acting and singing and teaching both of those skills.
Yeah, that's right. I started as a film actor in Canada when I was 10 years old, and acted in film and television all the way up through high school, and then moved to LA to go to theater school. And when I was 16, I fell in love with theater, and my very first play was Romeo and Juliet.
Oh my gosh. So I'm wondering, did you get to play Juliet?
No. I mean, I thought I would have been a great Juliet. I played the nurse. And in all of the Shakespeare that I've played on stage, I usually play the goofy sidekick. I also played Dogberry in Much Ado About Nothing. But actually, as an opera singer, and I mentioned this in my show, that's when I finally got to sing those leading lady Shakespearean heroines.
Well, you know, I think we have to write history right now. I think I think it would be amazing if you would perform a monologue of Juliet's for us. We don't care about the nurse anymore. And I thought it would be really interesting for us to visit a moment of the drama that Gounod chooses not to depict musically. So what will you be performing for us today?
Well, it's interesting that Gounod doesn't include it because it's a pretty famous monologue of Juliet's. She has arranged with her nurse to have Romeo visit her bedchamber that night to consummate their marriage. And she is alone, thinking about her husband, waiting for him to come and willing the night to fall so that the hours can pass so that she can see him. And she starts this aria begging the sun god to move the sun further across the sky so that night can fall and she can see him.
Gosh, even your description of this scene is so wonderfully poetic. I can't wait to see your performance.
Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds, towards Phoebus' lodging. Such a wagoner as Phaeton would whip you to the west and bring in cloudy night immediately. Spread thy close curtain, love-performing night, that runaways' eyes may wink and Romeo leap to these arms, untalked of and unseen. Lovers can see to do their amorous rites by their own beauties. Or, if love be blind, it best agrees with night. Come, civil knight, thou sober-suited matron all in black, and learn me how to lose a winning match played for a pair of stainless maidenhoods. Hood my unmanned blood, bathing in my cheeks with thy black mantle, till strange love grown bold think true love acted simple modesty. Come, night. Come, Romeo. Come, thou day and night. For thou wilt lie upon the wings of night whiter than new snow on a raven's back. Come, gentle night. Come, loving black-browed night. Give me my Romeo. And when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun. Oh, I have bought the mansion of a love, but not possessed it. And though I am sold, not yet enjoyed. How tedious is this day, as is the night before some festival to an impatient child who hath new robes and may not wear them. Oh, here comes my nurse, and she brings news, and every tongue that speaks but Romeo's name speaks heavenly eloquence.
That was amazing. And, you know, I want to delve into the poison aria in the opera and the scene where Juliet takes poison, which is, of course, one of the culminating points of the drama, because if you don't know, audience, it's not a real poison. She's just going to go to sleep for a little bit.
I love how you just became my bubby, you know. If you don't know, kids, it's not real.
It's an important plot point. But, you know, the way that this moment is handled in the play and in the opera is quite different. Why don't we start with Shakespeare? What does he do there?
What is similar is the sort of mental struggle that Juliet goes through when she's contemplating taking this potion, which is supposed to simulate death. And we can talk more about that later. The main difference is in the play, it's a very private moment. It's nighttime. The scene starts with her sending away her nurse, who normally would share her bedchamber at night. Her wedding to Paris has been moved up to the next day, and she sort of begs off the nurse and says, "Let me be alone tonight." And her plan is to take this poison. And she does take it, has all sorts of sort of hallucinations and horrible musings, and then falls and faints and, enters her fake death in that moment that night in private. But that's not what happens in the opera.
That's exactly right. Gounod obviously sees this as an opportunity to inject his piece with even a little bit more drama. So the first thing that happens, we've seen Juliet take the vial of poison from Frère Laurent, and she goes off by herself, as she does in Shakespeare's play, to contemplate taking the poison, and then she takes it. But the big difference is the aftermath of what happens. Rather than losing consciousness privately and being discovered later, she actually goes to her own wedding to the guy that she doesn't want to marry. And as she's processing up to wed him, she loses consciousness because the poison finally takes effect. And in fact, as she's starting to get woozy and lose it, she quotes something that she's sung much earlier in the opera. It's a little pair of lines in French. La haine est le berceau de cet amour fatal, or hate is the cradle of this fatal love. And then she says, may the grave be my nuptial bed. The first time we've heard this in the opera actually is the exact moment where she's learned Romeo's true family identity, realizing that she is in fact meant to be his enemy, not somebody who has immediately fallen in love with him. It's not the most comfortable scene to watch, but the poison aria really compels us to care for Juliet and to hope that things are going to turn out despite all the odds.
foi.
it still gives me goosebumps when I read the text, and it's such a horrific near miss. It almost works out, like seconds away from working out, and it doesn't.
Well, and it's interesting that you make the observation that they are seconds away from actually succeeding with this plan. Because in opera, nothing ever happens in a matter of seconds. And in a lot of ways, this is one of the biggest departures, perhaps, that Gounod makes from Shakespeare, again, so that he can play to the strengths of his own medium of opera. But in the play itself, this whole death scene happens pretty quickly. You know, in the opera, it's all of Act 5, which I will conservatively estimate takes like 17 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in the play, the real time crunch happens between the two deaths. Romeo has come to the tomb. He doesn't know that Juliet's faking it. He thinks she's actually dead. Encounters Paris and kills Paris. I mean, there's another dead body, unfortunately, a subject to fate. Sees Juliet, says this heart-crushing monologue about essentially, again, fate dealing him a terrible hand, and he's going to sort of shuffle off this mortal coil. He drinks the poison and says that he will kiss her one more time. So we get one more kiss, drinks the poison, and then says, literally, "True apothecary, thy drugs are quick. Thus with a kiss I die," and he dies, like right then and there. Juliet wakes up, the friar comes and says, "We got to get out of here, people are coming." She sees Romeo lying there and refuses to leave. And she discovers the poison in his hand and says, "Well, you didn't leave any for me. I'm going to kiss your lips and see maybe if there's some poison left on your lips." She kisses him and says, "Thy lips are warm." So she knows that he was alive just moments ago.
Yeah.
So then she has no poison. She has no options. She takes the dagger and says, "Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath." And she stabs herself. And that's it. They never see each other alive. But that's kind of a departure for this opera, isn't it?
Well, yeah, definitely. You know, Gounod has Romeo come to the tomb. He's distraught. And seeing Juliet, he kisses her one final time, and then he takes the poison. But Gounod's poison is slow acting.
It's time release, you know.
Time release, that's right. Time release gel caps poison. And that presents another opportunity for one final duet between the two characters. Juliet awakes from the fake poison, and they have a moment of false hope where they think that maybe they'll be able to continue to live. And then Romeo feels the effects of the poison and realizes what he's done. And toward the very end, as he's about to fade, Juliet finds the dagger and she stabs herself then. And at that point, there's really only 2 pages of opera left, but an interesting addition that Gounod needed to make for the land, the culture, the religion of his place and time. Rather than the two of them ending with something like, "I love you forever," they actually both, in duet, petition God for forgiveness. And this matters a lot because for Gounod, his audience would have been French and Catholic in the 19th century. And so to commit suicide or take your own life like that would be an immortal sin. And I suppose in the weirdest of, you know, silver linings to a cloud, to a very tragic cloud, by asking for forgiveness, we as the audience can have the hope that they might meet each other again in heaven and be reunited there. Catherine, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. This has been so delightful. I can't wait till we and all of us can do this in person. But what a wonderful treat to open the happy hour virtually to you and Michael as a guest.
Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure to get to talk about Shakespeare, whom I love, and opera, which I also love, and hang out with you. And I love your show, and thank you so much for all of the joy and happiness that you're spreading for all of us.
Thank you. Let me take one more opportunity to thank all of today's guests, both Catherine and Michael Powers, Rob Staley, and Ashley Fabian. It has truly been a delight to open up this Opera Happy Hour, virtually, of course, to them and to all of you who are still watching the show. As always, if you haven't had a chance to check out the LA Opera Relief Fund, please do that. That's a big source of sustainment for us right now. And as always, we're extremely thankful for your support there. There have been tons of digital offerings, sort of too many to name since the beginning of the year from LA Opera. So please continue to check those out. You'll get a wide array of new pieces, new commissions, new artists, new voices. And it makes me very excited about the future of opera and LA Opera in particular. And in the meantime, stay happy, stay healthy, get vaccinated if you can, and cheers.